The show is This Needs Saying. We've got a tremendous guest here today. Go and get your pencils and your pens. I'm going to give you time. And when we come back, we're going to talk about $850 million that you could have access to. Remember, don't you touch that dial. This needs saying, and we'll be right back. All right.
Why?
Why?
Why are you following me?
Why my hoodie make me look suspicious?
Why does my music make me dangerous?
Why are people that are supposed to protect me attacking me?
Why are you afraid of me? Why do you think I'm dangerous?
Why do I afraid of people who are supposed to protect me?
Why can't I make a peace sign without you labeling a gang sign?
Why does standing your ground only work when I'm on the ground?
Why do you show this photo over this one?
Why do you only stop and frisk me?
Why do you have low expectations for me?
Why can't I run down the street without causing alarms?
Why do you think I'm a thug?
Why do you assume I'm armed?
Why can I breathe?
Why is my mom scared every time I leave the house?
Why are you targeting me? Why am I a target?
Why?
Why? I know why.
And it has to stop.
It must stop.
Because I have dreams.
Because I can change the world.
Because I will make a difference.
Because I have a family.
Because I am strong.
Because I'm talented.
I have a voice.
I can find a cure.
I have goals.
I can lead the country.
I am determined.
I have a future.
Because I'm a scholar.
I am powerful.
I'm someone's friend.
I'm someone's brother.
I'm someone's son.
Someone loves me.
And because my life matters too.
My life matters.
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 Our lives matter.
And so did theirs.
Welcome back to Show is Ask the Advocate. We have the day to have a pleasure of having an expert in the healthcare field, Dr. Jeffery Sterling, the CEO of the Sterling Initiatives. Welcome to This Needs Saying, Doc.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you know what, Doctor, I know you flew in from Texas just to be with us here today, but when you walked into the studio, you looked around and you said, well, you know I'm from Chicago. I said, from Chicago. Can you give us just a little of your history? And I know also that you were born at Cook County Hospital.
Oh yeah, Cook County, love the place, always have. Born 54th King Drive, moved from there to this neighborhood, lived on 101st and Normal, 119th Parnell, Roseland, West Pullman, all of that. And then through educational opportunities, I actually got uprooted. My family got uprooted from here to Hyde Park.
Wow.
And I ended up going to what was at that time the smallest and oldest school in the country, in the state, Harvard St. George. And through that opportunity, I got to go to Northwestern, and from there, Harvard and Illinois, and University of Illinois College of Medicine, and the rest is history. But this has always been home, born and bred, living and dead. I'm a Chicagoan.
A Chicago young man that's done good.
Thank you, sir.
Well, let me just say this, that you give inspiration. That's why we run those type of commercials, because we have to protect our youth. And as you know, in this country right now, violence is a pandemic across the world. But we'll get to that later on. Now, briefly, just back to Northwestern. So after you were here and from that great grammar school, you went to Northwestern Illinois, but you've always had a consciousness. Tell us about your consciousness at Northwestern. I know you started a couple of things there.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty good. And with Northwestern was kind of weird because, you know, at heart, I was just a first-generation educated kid from the south side of Chicago. And I got transplanted to this place that didn't resemble anything that I even knew existed. And I pretty quickly had to get over myself and get out of the notion that I didn't belong to realizing that I needed to take advantage of what that place had to offer. I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Sure.
Actually, I was vice president of the Black Student Alliance.
Okay.
And I was famously having a conversation with the president of the general student body. And we were in a heated conversation, and he was losing the battle intellectually, and he just got stopped in his tracks. He looked at me and he said, "Now I realize what my father meant when he said, I'm sending you to Northwestern to learn how to deal with you." No, instead of being offended, what I took from that conversation is, you know what? That's what my mama sent me to Northwestern, to learn how to deal with you.
That's right.
So I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be put down. I wasn't going to assume a secondary or subservient position to this guy.
Sure.
What Northwestern really did was create that bridge by which I knew that I belonged any and everywhere that this world has to offer. And of course, from there I went to Harvard, so that's a completely different conversation on a whole nother level. But it was a beautiful thing. I have clearly had experiences in life that have allowed me access to ever increasing purviews about how the world works, and it's kind of interesting.
Well, you know what? Let's not run over that. Let's talk about the Harvard years.
Sure.
Because from a young man that matriculated to Northwestern and then took advantage of all the opportunities there, and then you were called to Harvard. For some of you who may not have heard that, we said Harvard.
Yeah,
that's the one in Massachusetts, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Tell us about your experiences there.
When I think about that place, one thing you did gloss over is I was a gangbanger when I was in Chicago. So if you want to really tell the story, there's a huge elevation on how all of that played out. But when I got to Harvard, one of the first things that really struck me was that in my class, there were people from 26 countries around the world. And you know, people talk about what it is you do, and I was in a combined degree program between Illinois and Harvard, getting my master's in public health, my business degree, and my medical degree. And you know, I'm sitting here, I'm just a doctor, right?
Dual degree,
Yeah.
business and medical.
That's right, and public health, all of that.
Because all of it is a business.
That's absolutely right.
The best doctors,
That's right.
the best lawyers are your best salesmen, the people that
That's
can
right.
sell themselves.
That's right, and be the message and convey that message to patients. You know, there's a lot to that. But again, the point I want to make about Harvard that's pretty indicative of it all, there are two quick points. One is that there were people there from 26 countries around the world, and a lot of them look like me. And when you have conversations with these people, when they tell you, oh, I'm here because I'm going back to my country to become the Minister of Health, or I'm going to run the health industry and it really gives you an understanding that this is a world that is meant for us to run,
Sure.
not just to be consumers of.
Sure.
And you know, the other part about the whole Harvard conversation is that affirmative action was actually founded there. And part of what's important to realize that this affirmative action construct was never meant to be something that was based on the ethics of it all. It was really meant to be reflective of an ever-changing demographic, so that the way in which they thought about it was that if this country was going to continue to be great, its citizenry and the changing demographic inside of this citizenry needed to come up.
Sure.
And to be able to assume all of those roles, like the Ministry of Health and the head of this, that, and the other thing. So that really exposed the entire world of possibilities in a way that wasn't to necessarily be in awe of or celebrated, but to be expected. So again, I know you like to say that everybody can be great. That's actually literally true, and there are people that practice that all day, every day. And I'm really thankful to be surrounded by people that continue to infuse that spirit in and around me.
Well, you prepared yourself, you took advantage of opportunities, and obviously you have been successful. But I know you're here on a mission.
Yes.
But before we get to that important mission, that $850 million that the state of Illinois, your dollars, your taxpaying dollars, that we have many businesses that can access those funds. And as you know, with some disparity studies, the rub is always, we can't find any qualified black businesses. But before we get to that, you're also an author.
Yes.
Can you tell us about some of the books that you have penned? And I know they've been very successful.
Yeah, I've written 4 and I'm writing my 5th. The first one was kind of my retirement from the everyday practice of medicine. It's called Behind the Curtain, A Peek at Life for Within the Emergency Department. And it's really compilation of about 70 crazy stories about what people walk into the emergency department with. So there's tearjerkers, there's scary stories, wild, crazy, all of that. But the message behind the book is actually choices have consequences. And what we really do is it's a public health telling of the consequences of the way in which you live your life, because when you present to the emergency department is when it gets real. And the book actually is very entertaining in that regard, but it actually tells a pretty simple story. The second book is called, this is actually my bestseller, there's 72 Hours in a Day.
72 hours in a day. Time management, right?
It's the time management.
Well, you use your
consideration.
business degree with that one. Tell us a little bit about that one too, Doc.
So the whole concept is about compressing time. And again, I don't want you to run around working like a maniac if that's not what it is you want to do, but we need to be more efficient in what it is we do. So just as we say the shortest distance between two places is a straight line, I'm in the business of getting to the good with all the other zigzag and all the rest of that. So if you actually learn how to implement best practices, that's all I do. My consulting company is a best practice implementation company.
Well, now I know you have 3 different companies too.
Yeah, that's right. We do a little something.
Well, you know what? Doc, we could probably do a whole series on you, Doc. But this whole question, and I'm trying to show your diverse skill set. That it's no stage joke, it's no magic. You were from an area that many of our viewers feel, in some regard, a sense of hopelessness. But seeing you successful, as a matter of fact, you just flew in. Tell the viewing audience about your businesses in Texas.
Sterling Initiatives is an international healthcare consulting and implementation firm. And what that basically means is that we take problems and turn them into solutions. It's really nothing more complicated than that. So whether you're talking about the clinical practice of medicine, the setup of any type of infrastructure, or the production of healthcare outcomes, we help you get to the outcome of choice. And we deal with it from a clinical perspective, financial perspective, administrative perspective, and all of that. The other things that I do are really an offshoot of that mission. I actually manage a series of physicians in a division of that company called Systems, where we staff emergency departments and we, through best practices, ensure that we are operating at the highest level of care to the patients that are being treated. Hard stop there. There's another company that we run called Sterling Medical Advice, where we provide information and advice to individuals all over the world via telemedicine. You dial a doc, get on the phone. You don't have to go to county and wait 9 hours with a bag lunch like people did back when I was there. You actually can talk to folks and get that done. So all of the things that I do is about best practice implementation, improving the quality of the lives that we want to serve. And with health at the center of that, we actually get people to the notion that health is wealth. So, that's my medical mission, and a lot of my businesses are geared toward that.
Well, I know you talk a lot about, and some of the things that I read about social determination. Yeah. And that you talk about it from really a very unique perspective from a black man in America, because you're also a world traveler, that you're not just looking at urban communities in the United States, but you actually do this around the world. Can you tell us about some of the international flow that you have?
Yeah, I worked with the government of Indonesia to put in place what's now the largest national healthcare system anywhere in the world. They have 17,000 islands, and the question there was, how do we connect all of these folks instead of building hospitals on each one of the islands? Is there a way to streamline that process? That's one example. And another example, the telemedicine piece that I talked about, we actually do that in Tokyo. And again, I just got back from 2 weeks in Johannesburg, where I didn't mention my medical supply company, SI Medical Supply, where we actually we have 109,000 products, and we provide medical equipment, supplies, and other things to individuals that need it. So we were just over in Johannesburg doing that. The point is that wherever we go, we just want to improve the quality of life that folks have, and the concept of limitlessness is something that's very important. We kind of have to get out of the parochial nature that we have, that everything is on our block. There's a big old world out there, and who better than us to provide leadership and
as you like to say, to demonstrate greatness here, there, and everywhere.
Well, you know what, Doc? When we talk about this whole question of opportunity, we know that, to be honest, we have to talk about the many years that black businesses have really been dying on the vine because of lack of opportunity. Can you talk about, Dr. Sterling, the relationship to the opportunity and also the relationship that has for black businesses to build what they say in the construction industry, probably the same thing in the healthcare, capacity?
That's right. So just as you were just talking about social determinants of health, so in other words, you have to be educated, you have to have a job, you have to do certain things in order to give yourself a position to have the best possible healthcare outcomes. There's an analogy to that in business in terms of having determinants that produce capacity. And you know, one of the things that I actually detest, and again, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I detest the current system that provides us opportunity, but in doing so institutionalizes our second-class status. So when I come up, even now, whenever I'm trying to do business in a new location, one of the first questions that I get asked, despite my having done business all over the world, is would you be willing to engage in subcontractor activity?
You know, I was about to let's take a pen right there for a second, because I was about to take that and you took it right out of my consciousness, that instead of bidding, and of course you are an international businessman, as a general contractor, that you would be relegated, especially in a state like Illinois and a city like Chicago that arguably is 80% black and brown.
Yeah.
And it's almost ridiculous that somebody would say, well, I'm here for the minority portion.
You got to be careful, because people's mentality, sometimes when people think they help you, they actually are relegating you to a life from which you can't escape. So consider this. Let's get back to your other question. You know, building capacity is about building capacity. Building capacity is as building capacity does. My question is, at what point in time does that bridge get built? If we actually claim that we're in the business of providing opportunities for black businesses, where's the bridge? Can we see a generation down the road to where the individuals that are currently doing business can ever become primes, can ever become general contractors? And if the institution that's been built to support black businesses produces an answer of no, then you're not doing what needs to be done. My challenge is at the beginning of the conversation. You know, in emergency medicine, or in medicine in general, doctors used to always have this deal about how to learn how to take care of certain patients or deal with procedures. And the concept was see one, do one, teach one. Now, again, I'm not recommending that for business, because you have to be a responsible ward of money. But the bottom line is that you have to provide an opportunity in order to demonstrate capability. And if the paradigm that exists begins and necessarily slots you in a situation where you're only going to be able to deal with, you know, there are people out there that are celebrating the fact that the state gave away $5 million in business to the black healthcare businesses last year.
But left $845 million on the table.
They leave that part of the conversation off the table. Because once again, you know, I actually asked this question when I spoke at the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce convention this past year. If you told me that you had a 100% improvement in that number and came back here next year, am I supposed to be happy about that? Absolutely not. There is no reason whatsoever why I can't swallow that elephant whole. And I'm here to tell you that we actually are looking to do that, because if the powers that be, if the entities that be haven't demonstrated the ability to create a paradigm that grows capacity among black businesses in this great state, then maybe it's time that someone else be allowed to demonstrate how that can be done effectively to the benefit of the citizens of the great state of Illinois.
Well, you know what, that's a perfect segue, Doc. I know that you have proposals and a plan to do just that. I told you, go get your pencils and your paper, because when we come back, we're going to get into specifics on that $850 million to show us this needs saying, and don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
No, I'm scared.
know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Doc, before the break, we were talking about really your life story, that you were a young black man in the city of Chicago that maybe had some rough patches, but you had opportunities that you made obviously very good about them. Now, we were talking about capacity as it relates to business, but I know that you have a specific call of action that you want state legislators, aldermen in the city of Chicago, and other municipality elected officials, but probably more importantly, educating the community. But can you tell us about the state of Illinois and the state Medicaid expansion and how that relates to black businesses being able to get a piece of that pie, and not just a piece of that pie, being able to, as you said, break down institutional barriers. But I know that a lot of money has been allocated, and it's sitting out there right now waiting for black businesses. What should we be doing to access those funds, Doc?
And this is indeed where people take those notes, because this is building off.
You talk about SIGs, this was a great one, into building capacity.
Yes.
From building capacity to getting money. So first things first, people need to learn how to play the game. There is a game that you need to get inside of. There's a wonderful program called the BEP program.
The BEP, the Business Enterprise Program.
That's right.
I know Larry Ivory sits on.
He sits on the BEP Council.
And that sets goals for the state.
That's right.
For inclusion for minority contractors.
That's right. And Larry's the president of the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce. But the point of that is that is the official means by which companies, businesses of any stripe get certified and get put into the binders by which people can access blacks, Hispanics, females, etc.
Sure.
So allowing yourself to be known is one approach to accessing the pot.
And that's
Now,
certification.
That's certification through the BEP program.
Through CMS.
That's right, Illinois Department of Central Management Services, all of that. So individuals need to look that up and learn how to play that game to become part of that game, because that's the existing paradigm.
Matter of fact, that's one of the programs, that's one of the enunciated things that the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce does for black businesses. They do certification.
And in the healthcare space, what we are looking to do is to identify, because there are a lot of successful black businesses in the state that don't participate in that process, who are successful on their own. What we're trying to do is to demonstrate capacity. And one thing that I need to say is it's not just about demonstrating your individual business's capacity, but demonstrating the capacity of our community with each other and collectively. And part of what the proposal that we're going to be talking about is getting at is showing how we as a community can create capacity that may not have been known to exist, because all you've been doing is looking at individual businesses.
Well,
so collectively we can make something happen.
Well, you know, Doc, when you talk about there are successful businesses in that field of managed care, Next Level Health or that is a company that heretofore, if my memory serves me correctly, when the state expanded, there were no minority companies to take advantage of a crazy figure like, was it $500 or $600 million a year?
Yep.
For the next like 5 or 6 years?
$850 million actually.
$850 million. That's annual.
That's the aspirational goal.
And we know that if it wasn't for the efforts of people like you and the chamber, that Next Level would have been left out of that.
Well, you know, again, success has 1,000 fathers. And the point of the matter is that there are wonderful people over there that have done and are doing wonderful things. Hard stop. One is not enough.
That's right.
100 is not enough.
That's right.
And what we're looking to do is to create an entire community that's based on success, that's based on entrepreneur, that's based on self-empowerment.
You know what,
That's
Doc,
what we got to get to.
I want you to stop it right there. T, can you put the doctor's information, because I want people to have that information now while we're showing it on the screen, because you have a proposal that would talk about $350 million, almost like a hedge fund or an incubator that you would then look to contract or develop or enhance the capacity of over 100 black businesses in all different types of areas.
They told you about that, huh?
Well, doctor, when we have somebody that flies in from Texas,
That's
you
right.
are world renowned. Can you tell us about that? Because that's specifically for Illinois.
Well, here's the point. The point is that if the existing program and process has shown itself to be unable to develop capacity on its own, instead of accepting that as a failure, perhaps we need to take a different approach. And what we want to do is to support, supplement, and build upon those efforts and demonstrate that through entities such as the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce and the private enterprise of businesses such as Sterling Initiatives, that we can play a role, we can do what had not been previously done. So the short follow-up to what you said is that yes, Sterling Initiatives is
Very
actually...
good, T. I'm looking at that. Tyrone just had that 844-724-7754. I'm sorry, Doc.
Yeah, that's good. But the point I want to make is that we actually are presenting a proposal by which, and the important part about this is that we are doing this proposal for the purpose of improving healthcare outcomes in parts of the state for which healthcare disparities exist.
And there is a great disparity in our
Multiple
community.
disparities in our community and in urban areas as well as in rural areas. So we cannot allow failure to define our experience. So given that the processes and the managed care organizations that are tasked with fulfilling this mission have left certain voids and certain healthcare disparities ideally left undone, then we're going to step up and fill those voids with a program that is being supported by 100 black businesses for us, by us, to the benefit of the citizens of the state of Illinois. So the point to be made to those businesses that are out there listening who may not have individual capacity to do this type of thing, what we're saying is that we have built and we are continuing to build that bridge by which we will train you up. We will give you an opportunity. We will mentor you. We will supervise you. We will give you a contract by which you can grow your business capacity so that on the next go around, you will now be able to do that. Same thing that I do with, I mentioned my physician business. When was the last time you heard of a physician being supervised? We actually do that. And this is the same type of thing where we want to take these businesses and coach them up so that they can, a generation from now, there won't be a question about whether we have a binder of black businesses that can perform as primes. Now, we still want to take the subcontractor money. We want to take it wherever it exists.
Sure.
But the point is that, as I said earlier, if you can't look out at the future and see a better tomorrow for our business community and for our citizens when it comes to healthcare considerations, then the process needs to be augmented. And that's exactly what it is we're trying to do.
Well, you know what? My good friend Larry Ivory says that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And this is being very proactive on what you're doing. I want the people and the business owners to really know that this has a ripple effect in the black community. If you have a job, one person has a job. But if a black business has a contract, there are many jobs. And the exponential benefit of that ripple effect is really incalculable. And now we are just so glad that you are here really sounding a clarion call for action now. because this is not something that's pie in the sky. And it seems to me that these are programs and policies that will benefit businesses in the state of Illinois, thereby enriching the total state.
That's the entire point.
And so who could be against that? But we know sometimes that economic development in our community comes with a high price. But you are to be commended for being able to use your talents, but more importantly, use your talents for the benefit of others.
We don't have a choice. Remember what I said about Harvard, going back to there. If we're going to have a community, if our community is going to have a future, and I'm talking about the state as well as the African American community, then we have to coach everybody up so that we can be good stewards of our own society here. This is necessary. This isn't charity. This is about the come up for the state and for the citizens of the state. You can't leave folks behind.
That's right. And it's your tax dollars.
And it's your tax dollars, and you deserve to be represented proportionate to what you look like in the state. And I'm coming back home. I'm so excited to be coming back home.
You are needed back home because we want young black men and women to see you. Then they know that there's a possibility that they too can achieve excellence. The show is Ask the Advocate. This needs saying. As the former Ask the Advocate host that W.L. Lillard produced for over 30 years, that's why we have this new form of business people to come on. I know you all enjoyed Mayor Tyrone Ward, the mayor of Robbins, and of course, who is the chairman of the Southland Black Chamber of Mayors, and he's also the first vice president of the Illinois State Mayors Conference. And so Dr. Jeffery Sterling has been in that fine tradition of excellence. And we want to commend you, Doctor. Thank you for coming on This Needs Saying. And remember, we'll see you next time. Matter of fact, make sure you make some calls and tell people, I'm tired of talking. This needs saying. We'll be right back.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably going to turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him. Hi, I'm a warning sign. I let people know when they're... Oh, gotta go.
I'll be right back.
Hi.
Welcome back. This needs saying. We've had a tremendous guest, Dr. Jeffery Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Initiatives. Doc, I want you to be able to come back anytime that you want to. Is there anything you want to say in closing, sir?
Well, you talk a lot about excellence, and actually the motto for my company is excellence requires no apologies. And, you know, you talked about where I came from, and hopefully there are people here that are very much like me. And I didn't rise above my background. I ran from it. I saw how my mom had been treated her entire life because she had to deal with people. And we as a community really have to get to the mindset to where people have to learn to deal with us. And economic empowerment, health, all of that fits together, and we need to keep driving that message home. And thank you so much for what you do. Thanks for letting me share this forum with you, and let's work together and get this done because it's right there for the taking. We just have to be in the business of taking it.
You know, Doc, it's been a pleasure. The show is This Needs Saying, and we'll see you next time. And remember, have your paper and your pencils. I'm Vincent Gilbert, and we're signing off. Doc, this whole paradigm, Doc, and that's a whole nother show about violence being changed as a criminal justice concern to a public health concern. I'm really going to lean on you, Doc, in that area, because I know that
we talked about that 20 years ago.
Wow.
That's how long we've been having this conversation about trauma and violence as a public health consideration. So that's how long it takes things to translate from what the physicians and public health professionals know into public policy.
20 years.
Man, I was at Cook County, and the Taste of Chicago would be going on, and 4-year-old kids would be shot and being brought over to the county all day, every day. When the temperature goes up, the shootings occur. People don't see the underbelly of the consequences of the choices that people either make or are forced to make. And it's real. It is a statement of more societal considerations than it is anything else. And those social determinants of health, economic determinants of wealth, we need to drive that conversation home, because people just want to focus on the symptom. Man, you got to get back where the cause is.
Literally where the cause is. I often say that when I hear anybody talking about a succession program that doesn't include, Dr. Sterling, a job, a contract, or an opportunity, it's just talk.
Yeah. Well, that was my thesis at Harvard, by the way. We called them Health and Human Service Centers. And actually, I surmised that the development of what we now define as social determinants of health would actually produce better healthcare outcomes. So in these Health and Human Service Centers, what we actually did was to obtain funding, and there would be skills training in the facility. There would be rudimentary education activities that were occurring there, as well as healthy eating considerations, as well as having a fitness environment where people could get on a treadmill and think, all in the same place, because that's where it all needs to happen. And in the same ways that we would go to the park and deal with the offerings there, well, you got to deal with the determinants of health up in that spot, and that's important.
Well, you know what? When we talk about violence, and it's a pandemic, it's all over the world. It has different faces all over the world, but there is a calculatable dollar amount for a gunshot victim, or the healing of a gunshot victim.
Exactly right.
Especially in these spaces now of limited resources, why did it take so long, do you think, from a criminal justice lock them up to a public health concern heal them? Why did it take so long for that?
Well, first of all, because there aren't limited resources. Or there's yet to be proven that there are limited resources. In the United States, 1 out of every $6 is spent in healthcare. We don't have a healthcare system in the United States. We have a healthcare industry. Healthcare, sick care stimulates the economy.
Sick care.
We don't focus on prevention. That's healthcare. If I wait until you get sick and then come in and cut on you, do procedures to you, that generates money, that stimulates the economy. That's what the United States does better than anyone else. We're number 1 in the world in terms of the amount of money spent on healthcare. That stimulates our economy. We're number 30 or so in terms of the production of healthcare outcomes.
Wow.
Healthcare outcomes are an offshoot, are a byproduct of the healthcare industry in the United States. And this is why people always talk about socialized medicine. To disrupt the current healthcare industry in the United States would be to disrupt the economy. Folks aren't trying to do that. So only if things get to the absurd and the ludicrous do you start to pay attention to it. So while we're spending off $3 trillion a year in the healthcare industry, at some point in time you look up and say, are we really comfortable with all these mass murders that are occurring? Maybe we've reached steady state equilibrium to where we need to calm it down just a touch. But these things have been going on for generations. People have been dying. My father died of a gunshot wound when I was 6.
Wow, when you were 6.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing for generations. So this story is not new. It's just, what are the calculatable costs of human suffering? Again, the God we worship here is not religious. It's not moral. It's green. That's the almighty dollar. That's the American religion. And once the things start to happen to where the activities that we're engaging in society start to disrupt the production of the almighty dollar, that's when folks are paying attention. So if you look at some of the people that have been murdered and some of the locations in which murders, it's just like with crack versus opiates. You know, when it happens to us, it's our fault. When it happens globally, it becomes a disease. Now it's an epidemic because violence is now occurring randomly. You know, we celebrate 9/11 every year for foreign terrorism, but we aren't still talking about domestic terror. It's all intertwined. You know, the long and short of it is that the reason why we aren't paying attention to it is because our incentives are not appropriately aligned to demand that we pay attention to it.
You know, we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress syndrome, but in the black community, in the urban areas, it's not post, it's current and ongoing.
Yeah, actually, we didn't talk about my healthcare blog called Straight No Chaser. I've done over 2,000 blogs where I've talked about every conceivable topic from a public health standpoint, from a medical standpoint, free information and advice. One of those topics is actually what you just said, post-traumatic stress disorder in communities that have been oppressed. And the point to be made is exactly that. The terror under which we live and the oppression under which we've suffered is actually surpasses the experience of any entity, including, with all due respect, our heroes that go overseas and engage in war on behalf of the country. What has happened to our community is an amazing construct and at least should be viewed in the same light as others for whom we allow post-traumatic stress disorder to be allowed. Yeah, our entire community suffering from it.
This has been, I'm not that smart, and I'm working on a lot of stuff, and you obviously are working on a lot of stuff, but there's some real synergy, I mean like right now synergy. Yeah. This has been a fascinating conversation, Dr. Sterling, and I know that my viewers are waiting with bated breath to talk to you and get next steps and next directions. Please
Google me.
Google the doctor. Google Dr. Jeffery Sterling, MD, and you'll get all the information that you need. And remember, this needs sane. We'll see you next time.